The point becomes is that they create two people. They create a human being which has the protections of the Constitution as we the people, and they create legally what is called a person. And a person is a corporate construct. It's not something real. It's like the Egyptians had the Ba, which is the body, and the Ka, which was the spirit. They actually create a Ka for you, which is your name in all capital letters. Your name in all capital letters, like my name, Sean David Morton, in all capital letters. Banks, credit card companies, any institution of the federal government, private agencies. And by the way, the Internal Revenue Service is a private agency that's domiciled out of Puerto Rico. The Securities and Exchange Commission, all these people are all domiciled out of Puerto Rico, which is why Puerto Rico will never be a state, because most of these government agencies are domiciled outside the United States as private companies and corporations. What they do is they create your name in all capital letters, which becomes what we call a straw man. It's called a straw man legis, or a legal straw man. In essence, they create a corporate fiction of you, and that corporate fiction of you is now bonded to your birth certificate and your social security number. That's why you can walk into court and they can fine you $500, $600, $700 without a trial, because in the Constitution you can't be fined more than $20 without a jury trial. Heck, they fine you that every day. And that's because you're their property. You're a debtor, and the minute you come in front of that judge, you're a debtor. The minute I walk into a court and they say, who are you? And I say, I am the secured party creditor and the third party intervener for the straw man legis of Sean David Morton, that's a whole different conversation with a judge, because now the judge realizes you don't owe the government anything and you're coming from a place of power as a creditor rather than a debtor. So I know this is all kind of complicated stuff. There's stuff that's it's called the redemption movement now. We talk about filing uniform commercial code filings against your name, copyrighting your name so that they can't use it in their documents, but they communicate with you, especially on the internet. I mean, now that anybody can smear you for anything on the internet, having an actual copyright on your name is actually very valuable, because you can say to somebody smearing you on the web, fine, you can use my name all you want, but that'll be $50,000 per use, and you can actually charge them and win in court if you want, because that becomes your property along with your image and whatever else. So the whole point of this is that when you kill civilians in a war, they call it collateral damage, because you're damaging the collateral of the state, which is the civilian population. So that's how we're basically just screwed, blued, and tattooed. All these people think, well, you shouldn't pay your taxes, or your 1040 or whatever else. I'm like, you're an idiot. You signed a contract, and contractual law supersedes constitutional law. How the government gets you is you sign a whole series of compacts and contracts that have cascade agreements. When you sign a driver's license as a piece of identification, what is it that says that I'm signing a piece of legislation that says that I have to obey all the laws on the road and go 55 miles an hour, not make in New York, not make a turn on a red light, et cetera, et cetera? Well, you're agreeing to a compact that has a cascade agreement that's attached to it. So when you sign a 1040, and it says at the top, voluntary income tax form, and all these people say, oh, it's unconstitutional, you can't make me do this. And I'm like, well, idiot, if you go in and join the Army or the Marine Corps and you sign on the dotted line and you don't show up, they arrest you, they take you to jail. If I volunteer and I sign a federal document that says I agree to pay their taxes and be involved in their system, they come and get you, they take you away. So you have to revoke the contracts that you've signed. And remember, being free is not easy, because I think, therefore I'm dangerous. You have to have knowledge which accompanies freedom, because they make it easy. They'll give you credit, they'll give you houses, they'll give you whatever. That's the easy part. Sign this document, sign this thing. Every time you sign away a right, every time you get a license, every time you get whatever. By the way, the very definition of licenses is that you have the constitutional right to do it, but if you don't want the Guidos from the government coming and busting your window, you better get a license from the mob to make sure that you have protection so that they don't hassle you every day. You don't need, for example, a license to do business. I mean, what a shock. You have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You have the right to making a living. Who says you need permission from the government to get married? Why do you need a marriage license? Because that makes the government your partner. And as your partner, they come in and they demand a cut. They demand a piece of your action, because they say, well, we're providing you with services. If you get a business license, you have access to all these wonderful things the government can provide. Therefore, we have a right with you as our franchisee, just like you've opened a McDonald's, to a cut of your profits. If I go to McDonald's and I say I want to open a McDonald's franchise, I open my McDonald's, and McDonald's comes in and takes half my money as part of the franchise. When you sign a W-4, it says franchisee right at the top. You become a franchisee of the federal government. So all this is corporate. All of this is contractual. All of this is you every single day signing away your rights and your privileges and your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. People don't understand that the Constitution is not for us. The Constitution is a contract between the federal government and the states. And you can walk into court and they'll tell you that all day long. But most municipal courts are courts of Admiralty law. Most municipal courts are courts of basically martial law, where the judge can do pretty much anything he wants to. But again, you come in as a secured party creditor, as we call it, third-party intervener, and you say there's a difference between the straw man legis, the corporate fiction that you've created, and who I am as a human being, as opposed to that paper person you've created. That's a whole different conversation. And there are hundreds of thousands of people sitting in jail right now because they've convinced you that you as a flesh and blood human being are the corporate paper person, and whatever they do to that corporate paper person, you have to go along with as the flesh and blood person. And there's people sitting in jail because they don't understand the difference. So as shocking as a lot of this sounds, again, I think therefore I'm dangerous. You have to think your way out of these things, and you have to study to show thyself approved, as the Bible says. Without vision, the people perish. Actually, technically, without knowledge, the people perish, and that's exactly it. There's two whole different systems. There's a system for people that want to go along and want to be a nice sheep and want to just eat the grass and go where they're supposed to go, and the minute the sheep gets outside the flock, they get chased by the dog and come back in. And there's a system for people that want to think their way out of it and think in terms of limited liability companies and trusts and filing the paperwork to separate yourself from that. But it's an underground. Most people don't want to share the knowledge because nobody wants to prairie dog and put their head up above it because nobody wants to get cut off. They'll leave you alone because governments don't want to mess with the wolves. They've got plenty of sheep that they want to shear. So the minute you stand up to these people, they're like bullies. They usually just kind of run away, and they just think, fine, we got sheep to deal with. So that's how people are enslaved. That's what the Matrix is all about. But the minute you start piercing the veil of the Matrix, it all begins to unravel. That's why everything's interconnected, whether or not it's 9/11 or metaphysics or UFOs or conspiracy theories or whatever else. One thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, because each piece just peels back another layer on the onion. A case in point, when you go to prison, you actually create a bond. You become a bonded prisoner, and that bond is then sold to various banks. That's the very definition of bondage. And the largest owner of those bonds of prisoners in the United States is Walmart. And it's the perfect source of slave labor. We have close to 2% of the male population of the United States is behind bars in prison. Amongst the minority populations, for example, we've got close to 14% of the minority male population is actually behind bars. That's we've got right now about 7 million people in jail. I believe that statistic is correct in the U.S. And there's probably close to 14 to 20 million people actually on parole or under some kind of government program or whatever. That's gigantic. That's more people than communist China, and they have a population of somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5 billion or so. We have more people in jail or prison or underneath a jail or prison or parole program than any industrialized nation in the world. So all these people that talk about, they're going to build concentration camps and FEMA camps and whatever else, why? Everybody's already in jail now. The only reason they're going to use the military to put down civil unrest and whatever else is when the people start getting out of the box. And that apparently is getting ready to happen. Remember, Pluto and Capricorn, again, the last time Pluto went through Capricorn was the Revolutionary War. And the Boston Tea Party of 1773, I think it was, that was a stamp tax that was actually passed by Britain to support a British war.